Well, if you have spent even 2 seconds on the internet, on social media in recent times, you have undoubtedly seen these two individuals.
What the Republican Party doesn't understand about Gen Z is we don't like you. You claim you want to appeal to Gen Z, but you call us stupid, you say we're dumb, you say we're indoctrinated.
We have sat by and we have idly watched over and over and over again as you value NRA money and the right to a gun over our lives. But this is what you do not understand. We are no longer watching. We are now voting. We are now in the streets, and I would be scared. Your time has come, and 2024 will be ugly. We are over this.
Look, America has a sickness, and that sickness is our obsession with guns. If you're someone who opposes gun control, or has 50 plus guns in your household, or is giving guns to your 2-year-old children, you're part of the issue, and I have no problem saying that.
From those collage of clips, those two individuals are Harry Sisson and Chris Mowry. I hope I'm saying their names right. And they have become the chief faces of the Biden 2024 re-election effort. I have a video coming out on Biden 2024 very soon, why I think it's disastrous. But back to these two, and they have essentially gotten unreal amounts of engagement. Harry Sisson, particularly, has gotten over 100,000 followers on Twitter, perhaps even more on TikTok. Chris Mowry, not as much, but his engagement is still very high. And the critiques of these two individuals from the right have absolutely been comical, and they have made me want more. They have left me wanting. Indeed, these two individuals speak as if they are the representatives of all Gen Z. And this, of course, leaves them open to mockery and derision from some of the biggest voices on the right. And here is the problem that I have, my friends. These political content creators, commentators, YouTubers, Twitter users, people who are actively trying to grow their follower accounts and trying to expand their influence in the cultural space, many of those very same people are not incentivized to tell the truth. They're not incentivized to actually make good arguments because of the current political discourse in which we exist in, where our environment rewards things that get clicks and not things that actually edify the soul. One of the biggest talking points that has come out about Sisson and Mowry is that they are Democratic operatives paid by the DNC to advance Biden's message, basically propagandists. And while I do believe they're propagandists, and while it is clear that Mowry and Sisson are Democratic activists who are bought and paid for by powerful interest, this is not the most compelling critique of their project or of their content. The most compelling critique of their project is the fact that Sisson and Mowry take advantage of the poor state of our political discourse, which is rife with anti-intellectualism, and then they use them to empower bad actors and bad ideas like Joe Biden and his whole cartel of thinkers and analysts that sit in the White House and sit in Congress. That is the true problem. But so long as conservative content creators and columnists and pundits or whatever continue to mock people who are like Sisson and Mowry, as opposed to examining where these two fit in the broader picture of history and in the broader context of our political conversation, not only will they continue to miss the mark, they will miss the important, compelling critiques that could put propaganda artists like Mowry and Sisson to shame in a very rigid and righteous way. The critique against Mowry and Sisson, as I mentioned, is not because they've been paid by the DNC. Many folks have been paid by the RNC and the DNC to push political narratives. The critique is that they are part of a long tradition of the youth being used by powerful political interests to push certain ideas that either by virtue of their youth, by virtue of their limited ability to comprehend the complexities of issues, or by virtue of the environment they live in, either one of those factors, they don't understand. The ideas they don't understand. Indeed, throughout history, it's actually been a goal of regimes to get the youth on their side. For example, look at the Soviets and how they treated their youth. Vladimir Lenin, for example, he had this idea that the youth were the next generation to challenge the bourgeoisie, to bring forth the Marxist revolution. In fact, Lenin said as much. He said that we need a generation of young people who began to reach political maturity in the midst of a disciplined and desperate struggle against the bourgeoisie. In this struggle, that generation is training genuine communists. It must subordinate this struggle and link up with it each step in its studies, education, and training. Now, the biggest argument against Sasan and Maori is that they are artificially astroturfed and produced by the algorithms, but they're not produced by the algorithms solely. Unlike what some very prominent political figures say, who have a lot of followers, the algorithms are not the holy grail. The algorithms do not create ideas. The algorithms enhance what is already there. And so the popularity of these two have to compel us to ask ourselves, what about our current political conversation enables people like this to rise? Again, the clickbait, the short attention to detail, the short attention spans, all of these factors which come to characterize the digital age. There's an author called Nicholas Carr who did a very good book called The Shallows on this problem. The digital age, the studies have shown that children raised under the auspices of smartphones, of computers, of technology, who were basically raised on them, have shorter attention spans, shorter information recall, and shorter ability to deal with complex issues compared to children who were raised with less technological interference in their lives and their development, and who actually read books, who actually sat down and dealt with concepts. Again, the TikTok generation is a result of the digital age, and I would say it is both a threat and it's also a boon. It is a threat because, again, it reduces, in a way, the younger generation's ability to handle complex issues delicately, but it's also a boon because it takes more power away from established authorities to control the narrative, which is why Sasan and Maori have been hired by Biden and the DNC. It's all about information control. So let's break this down. First principles. In a free society, actually in any society, forget a free society, in any society, a society grows or it decays on the basis of what its citizens know. This is why regimes throughout history have tried to propagandize the masses with particular ideas in most cases that are untrue or evoke their emotions, as opposed to evoking their sense of reason, their sense of actually being a human being. And in doing so, they have managed to hold on to power by either driving fear into people or driving passion into people, and then using that as a basis for rule. This is what the United States did in the 1940s when we used propaganda to make people feel as if they didn't support the war effort that the Americans were doing in Europe and in Asia, they were actually supporting Hitler, which is a non sequitur if I ever heard one, but this is the language that was used. Not only that, but Disney and other cultural forces were co-opted by the government, literally seized by the government, to also foist this narrative upon the American people. Not only that, but there was actually a government wartime office which was used to foist these narratives upon people. But back in the 1940s, the technological creativity of man was static in that it was unchanging. And in that unchanging state, man's ability to perceive certain concepts was limited because the concepts he had were tightly knit and controlled. You go all the way 50, 60, 70 years away from that period in time to the 21st century, and what do you have? The information streams are wide open, like a river that just flows down its cascading path. And in that sense, the ability of man to perceive information is wide open. And so, first principles, if a society can only grow with the amount of information it has, if ideas precede accomplishment, then the more access to ideas you have, theoretically, the more accomplishment you should be able to achieve. In decentralization, getting information dispensed through non-centralized authorities, that is the trigger of man's creativity. Primitive man, did not come out of the caves and into buildings, into castles, and into works of creative genius on the basis of centralized authority. He came out of those on the basis of understanding the limits of his nature and the necessity of self-preservation, and marrying those two things along with his creative will to birth something greater than anyone had ever seen at that point. What am I saying? Here's what I'm saying. Let me translate it back to this conversation. If you control what people see, you control what people think. Joe Biden's White House had 50 TikTokers, this is according to Business Insider, 50 TikTokers, YouTubers, and Twitch streamers that they enlisted back in 2021 to promote their vaccine agenda, to promote their agenda concerning their versions of medical outreach and the vaccine, to basically tout their COVID narrative. And regardless of what you think about the COVID narrative, that is absolutely inconsequential to the fact that the Biden White House, by doing this, recognized that the decentralized streams of information that allow society to grow actually undercuts and undermines the official efforts from these organizations that for 50, 60 years have been prided and praised as the gold standard for knowledge. Some of you watching me may have one-time thought, or still think that NBC, ABC, or CBS are the gold standard for knowledge because they are the official sources. And yet, these official sources have been caught working with government agencies on numerous occasions. These official sources, like the New York Times, have been caught quite literally holding water for the military-industrial complex to push false ideas. Weapons of mass destruction, the New York Times is all over that. The New York Times is actually in support of the Iraq War. These official sources have been caught perverting information on the benefit of special interests as opposed to holding firm to the concrete foundation of truth. These official sources have oftentimes been used due to their centralized nature to mislead people. Sasan and Mowry represent the latest iteration of the government's attempt to taint decentralized sources of information, like social media, and fill them with those official sources, which, in other words, is another way to say, control them by any means possible. Mowry and Sasan are agents of the current regime, agents of the left, agents meant to pollute your ability to have a decentralized information that comes from the heart, not from some office in a political analyst's, room, or the DNC's headquarters, or anyone's headquarters, and to therefore push those narratives forth. That's what they represent. Why did I mention the Soviets earlier? I mentioned the Soviets because, again, the youth have always been seen as an instrument for bringing forth certain kinds of political power into motion, or setting political agendas into motion, not just because they are impressionable. That's a mistake. And this is, again, all these conservatives are like, well, these guys, they look like they're 12 or whatever. That doesn't matter. You guys care more about aesthetics than you actually do the phenomenon that I'm trying to break down for you that's going on. It doesn't matter that they look like they're 12 or they're young. What matters is the aesthetic of youth itself is valuable because there's something about youth that inspires imagination in people. And that imagination, if you remember what I said earlier, is part of evoking passion in the masses and getting them to go on with your ideas. There's a reason why all political organizations, Republicans and Democrats, try to get the youth. Not because they're impressionable, but because they are marketable. Because of an instinct within human nature that values youth. And if you can appeal to the instincts, reason doesn't matter. Arguments and logic, they don't matter. The fact that these gentlemen are basically just touting ideas that they have not critically thought through and that are demonstrably false and are the lowest of the low, that doesn't matter. None of that matters because you're appealing to instinct. How you make them feel matters. Do you see? In a free society, we all have the obligation to ensure that knowledge is decentralized, our modes of communicating knowledge are also decentralized, and our way of tackling knowledge has to do with the merits of claims made and the merits of content presented, and not per se the merits of the presenters or the merits of the authorities presenting the information. But of course, political interests benefit when people consider the merits of the authorities presenting the information over the information itself. Hence, Sasan and Maori serve as emissaries for those sources to continue to have power in an age, a decentralized age, where their hold on power is being threatened by the evolution of human communication. That is why these two are concerning. That is what these two represent. And on that basis, forget their youth. On that basis, their project should be rejected, not mocked. They should be rejected, and sound arguments should be presented to people about their project in a way that makes it expressly clear what's going on. You won't beat them by mockery. Unfortunately, a lot of Gen Z, due to having their reason depressed by over technologicalization of them, have sentiments like Sasan and Maori. Look at the data. A majority of Gen Z are actually quite woke, unfortunately. But there's hope. There's hope in the fact that plenty of people can be waking up from their emotional instincts, and they can be taken to a place that is better, that is higher. Of course, the fires of youth are a little bit rebellious and wild, and they may not entirely reflect that. But even the youth, as I have demonstrated to you throughout history, can be reached, but they must be reached by people who are intellectually serious and not people who do not understand the significance of this moment. Use reason for your arguments. Do not mock people. Do not insult people's looks or their youth. Do not do things that are primitive and undeserving of your higher nature as a human being. Do not do things that will get you clicks but will not edify you. Do not do things that have no epistemic value whatsoever. Do things that will progress the culture, progress society, and progress man's search for truth. And then maybe people like Sasan and Maori wouldn't be so big. Maybe they wouldn't have so much damn influence. But so long as you continue to be social media warriors, this is going to get worse. There's going to be more youth being co-opted by the power structure and used against people. And guess what? You're going to deserve the consequences if you are part of the problem. If you're not part of the problem, I'm not talking to you. But if you're part of the problem, you will deserve the consequences of what you get. All right, guys, I'm done. I love you guys so much. Like this video, comment on this video, share this video, subscribe to this channel. Help us get the message out there. This is severe. This is severe, people. Help us get the message out there. I love you guys so much, and please, I'm sweating and everything. This is severe. Please stay pensive. Bye, guys.